part of my problem was that I wasn't being myself. I was trying so hard to fit in so that I could be liked. I was trying so hard to at least just be normal because I was afraid. Even if I wasn't acknowledging that consciously, I know I was afraid that if I said the things out loud that I thought might be funny, tried to do the jokes, tried to be the big joker or have big actions or whatever, that I would be made fun of. We're responsible. We can choose how we react. We choose what energy we want to hold, what energy we want to put out, what energy we want to receive. So it's up to us. This is the Energy Within podcast, all about accessing, nurturing, and building your energy and confidence to be your true self, accept your soul's mission, and start taking action on it. My name is Carrie Jokala. I am your host. I am a Reiki master teacher, a fitness instructor, a wife, a mom to 2 little boys, and this is episode 135. And first of all, there's definitely going to be some kid noise in the background if you haven't heard it already. And at the time I'm recording this, you're going to hear this episode starting on Wednesday, April 27th, but I'm recording this on Monday, April 25th. And right now, for the month of April, I have 1,707 downloads of this podcast. And that's almost double what the podcast had last month, which is already infinitely higher than it had ever been. So that's amazing. If you're brand new here, thank you so much for being here. Hello and welcome. If you've been here for a long time, thank you for being here and being a loyal listener. Thank you for sharing the podcast. And let me jump ahead really quick and remind you again that if you do enjoy this episode or any others, please feel free to share it. Send it to somebody you love. Post it on your social media, take a screenshot or do a screen recording and grab some audio. Tag me and let me know what you liked. So today's episode is going to be a little bit of musing with some personal stories and hopefully some good takeaway tips for you as well. If you clicked on this episode, it's likely that you have felt this way at some point in your life, if not right now. And I've talked about this, or at least mentioned this topic a few times, I know, but we're all seemingly on this search to find ourselves, to come back to ourselves maybe, or just figure out who we are. Maybe we still feel like we haven't figured it out no matter how old we are. Still trying to figure out our purpose, asking question after question and still not feeling certain, still feeling lost, floundering. And then maybe we feel like we've sort of got a hold on it and then something pulls us back. And we end up in these places where we know we're not being ourselves. It's a different level than just questioning and wondering. It's when you are either fully depressed or just feeling sad and down and lacking joy and inspiration, lacking motivation on more of a soul level. It's not necessarily just like, oh, one day or even for a few weeks or whatever, for some reason, you don't have a lot of energy or motivation. This is different. This is that soul knowing that something is off, something's wrong. And if you don't do something about it, you're going to remain stuck forever, unhappy forever. And maybe you think about just giving up in the sense of just staying where you are. Staying stuck in a job that you don't like, staying stuck maybe in a relationship that you don't like, a group of friends that you don't like, a career you don't like, even something like living somewhere that you don't like. So I know that I've been in that place multiple times. One where it was obvious to me in the moment that I was no longer myself, and others where it kind of took some hindsight to realize that it really was the same thing. I don't know what they're doing in there. If you can hear, it's probably cars dropping off of a ledge or something. I don't know. So the obvious example, when I was working a particular job where I could almost pretty much feel my soul getting sucked out of me. When I first came into this place, I know 100% that I was fully myself. I was being my kind of over the top, goofy, weird self, and people even told me what a breath of fresh air it was. And then, like, I was having a good enough time. Like, it was just office work. It wasn't anything off the charts. It wasn't anything soul fulfilling, but it was a job. It paid better than any job I'd had leading up to that point. And so far, I hadn't encountered really any issues. And slowly I started learning, like I would have a couple people come up and just start talking, people that worked there. And I remember one guy who I also thought was pretty hilarious and really fun to talk to. And he came up one day and he was just so drained. And I was thinking maybe it was just he was having a rough day. He comes up and he's like, man, I hate my job. And here I am wondering why, because things are still great over here. And then slowly, it was a slow process of something I can't really describe because it's also been a long time since this happened. So maybe back then I could put more pieces together, but it was a slow process of starting to kind of feel a little more broken down as more problems came up, as more heads started butting together, as more people started being kind of jerky, not just to me, but just around a lot from, in some cases from the top down, but all across the board. Not everybody. And of the people who were like that, it wasn't necessarily that they were all like that all the time, but it was enough that it would get overwhelming and really reached a point where no matter how much I did to try to hype myself up every day before going into work, listening to, I don't think podcasts necessarily existed yet. And if they did, I definitely wasn't on that train yet, but I had still like some business audios, motivational audios, Chalene Johnson's original Car Smart audios, which is basically the first version of her podcast. I would listen to things like that. The coach calls from the network marketing business that I was in, I'd listen to those recordings, some moving meditations, things like that. Anything I could do to pump myself up, get myself in a good mood on the way to work. And something about that air in that environment. When you talk about feeling the energy, this was the embodiment of that. You would open the door and all of that work was literally out the door. So it wasn't for lack of trying. It was something about crossing that threshold and just the energy of that entire place was just not great. Not talking specifically about any certain people or anything like that. I know I definitely wasn't at my best all the time either, but that's part of the whole point of this story. So what I'm getting to will be coming. But I noticed this happen with other people who would come into work there in all departments. Again, literally across the board. People would come in excited and happy and feeling like I would feel like they were being themselves. And then I would watch slowly as they would all get broken down to about the same level. And I really don't feel it was a purposeful thing on any person or department or anything like that. It was just something about the collective energy that went through this place. And that's why sometimes, little side note here, anytime I mention anything about if it's your environment that's holding you back, that it may be that you just need to find a different environment, because I think in so many instances there's only so much that one person can do to affect the energy for a large place. It can be done, absolutely. But I think you've got to be so secure in who you are, so okay with not worrying about what other people think, and be able to maintain that in the face of that constant low vibe, low frequency energy. So if it's too overwhelming and too much to fight against and draining you every day, it might be time to consider a change of environment, of job, of whatever. Because sometimes if you go back and listen to about this time-ish last year, my interview with Token Carney, a big theme behind that episode is that sometimes you need to run away from your environment and run towards something better. So not looking at it necessarily like you're just running away from your problems, but you're getting out of what's keeping you stuck, putting it behind you, and moving forward to something better. Short acknowledgement here to make sure that you're processing through what you're feeling. You're not ignoring that, because that's going to come up and bite you in the butt. But physical places, perhaps, certain people, sometimes it's just time to go. And so really what was happening to me personally, I reached a point where I kind of had a realization where I'm like, wow, I feel like I can get very snippy very easily, very irritated very easily. I don't feel like I'm the same positive person here at work that I know I used to be. And I feel like it's also filtering into a lot of the rest of my life a little bit, not entirely, but it's hard to bring just one persona with you somewhere. Because we're one person. All the facets of us come with us everywhere we go at all times. So however you're acting in one area, even if you're trying to keep it separate, things are going to start to filter over. And I really truly felt like I was losing myself. And then there was a part of me that felt like it was going to be so hard and such an uphill battle to go back to being the positive, happy, upbeat person I always had been. Because not necessarily like anyone said this out loud, but for some reason I just had this thought that people would think that if I just flipped a switch one day and was doing my best to be that person again, that they would think that that was the fraud, that I was lying and trying to be someone who I'm not. Because maybe they had gotten so used to this other person who could get easily irritated and flustered. Now, I don't feel like I was necessarily mean, but I know I could get very irritated very quickly. But I wasn't the only one. Little side note there. I wasn't the only one. We're all human. We're all human. But I was just afraid that it was going to be a fight to have to try to show people that I wasn't being this fake, happy, positive person. That really was me that I was trying to bring back. So I kind of gave up before I even started. And what made me realize that I was not going crazy, not overthinking things, was actually Shalene Johnson. It was initially called Camp Turbo Kick, and then after a few years it got renamed to Camp Do More. But it was a blend. Like, it wasn't purely a fitness convention. It also included motivational lectures. There was a dance party. There was always a workout fashion line that went with the Turbo Kick and all those other programs that she had when she was doing the fitness stuff. And so there was a fashion show, and it was just a blast. It was so much fun. And I really loved all the motivational lectures. And she brought in one guy. She actually brought him in 2 years in a row. His name is Win Claybaugh. And I know I've mentioned this before. I feel like I have, but I think it's also been a long time. He wrote this book called Be Nice or Else. And I highly recommend it if you can get your hands on it. And he has these 10 golden rules. And he had us do an exercise where I'm not always a fan of having to do this, but it turned out okay. We had to turn to the person next to us. And we had to pick which one of these 10 golden rules resonated the most with us and tell the other person which one and why. And then, when we got done with that, he asked the audience if anyone wanted to share what theirs was. And I raised my hand because I was ready to be brave. And they had a microphone they brought around. I was either the first or second person to go. And mine was number 2, which is always be in a great mood. I don't really like this other half, but it says fake it when necessary. That's a whole different topic, I feel like. But the always be in a great mood. I liked that one because of what he said about it, that we are responsible for our mood, which is what we talk about all the time. We're responsible. We can choose how we react. We choose what energy we want to hold, what energy we want to put out, what energy we want to receive. So it's up to us. So that kind of reignited my fire for trying to set myself up to be in a good mood and pump myself up before getting to work. It didn't always work, but I tried to hold that in my head to try to help me. But here's the thing that happened next. So the next day, I don't remember what the topic of Shalene's speech was that day. It was a long time ago. But what I do remember is that she suddenly mentioned, she's like, there was someone who had, and she mentioned the details of what I had said in my story. And I realized like, oh, she's talking about me. Oh, okay. So I raised my hand. I was sitting in the front row. She's on stage. She walks directly in front of me and looks at me and says something to the effect of, you are an amazing, sparkling human being, something like that, sparkling personality or something along those lines. Just bubbly. I remember that word. And talking about the place was working, because I had referenced that in what I said. She's like, they don't deserve you. And she just gave me this whole like pump up speech. And no, it wasn't like a one-on-one discussion, but she's someone who I've always followed, looked up to, really respected. So for me, I bawled my eyes out. Like I had to run out of the room and go get some toilet paper out of the bathroom and sneak back in to hear the rest of the lecture. Or maybe someone went and got it for me. I don't even remember. But I lost it. So for her to look at me and see that about me made me realize that I was still in there. If someone who didn't really know me could see that part of me, barely knowing me, then I knew that I hadn't totally lost myself, that I could go back to being that person again, that I now had permission, not that I needed to look for permission, but it's nice to have it. I had permission within myself to not worry about what anybody else would possibly think of me and go back to being that person. Now, part of that did require eventually, at least within the next couple of years from that point, I know it was still a long time, but eventually leaving that environment. And then as another example where I didn't realize it at the time is part of the story that you know about me growing up, not having confidence in myself, feeling isolated, feeling alone. And while yes, in grade school in particular, there were times when I know I was intentionally excluded, as in I have evidence, I can prove it. As I got older, and I believe as you get older, that's when you start to become more responsible for your own actions, reactions, energy. When you're a kid, you're still trying to figure everything else out. But as you get older, it's time to start owning who you are, how you're acting, how you're reacting. I know now, in looking back, that part of my problem was that I wasn't being myself. I was trying so hard to fit in so that I could be liked. I was trying so hard to at least just be normal because I was afraid, even if I wasn't acknowledging that consciously, I know I was afraid that if I said the things out loud that I thought might be funny, tried to do the jokes, tried to be the big joker or have big actions or whatever, that I would be made fun of. And it's something that has taken a long time for me to work through. And I'm sure that I'm not 100% all the way through processing it yet and getting over that. But I know I've come a long way, a very, very long way. But knowing now that part of the problem, especially as I was older, is that I was not letting me be myself. That's why it's such a bigger part of my mission and my message now to try to let everyone know, to let you know that it's okay. Life is better when you are just yourself, when you stop trying so hard to fit in. When you're just fully yourself, if you can be patient and trust, your people will find you. They will. It might not happen right away, so don't let that discourage you. Just keep being yourself and know that if you feel like you've been being somebody who's not truly you in a particular environment around certain people for a long period of time, it's going to be a journey, especially if you're staying in that environment. So just keep going. Do what you need to do. If you feel like staying there is the right thing to do, then do it. Embody that energy of who you really are and go with it. If it requires that you change your environment, then do it. So I have another tip for you, but a quick sum up out of those stories is to remember first and foremost that no matter what anyone else is doing around you, you are in charge of who you are. You are in charge of your energy, both what you're putting out and what you are willing to receive. You do not have to absorb other people's energy. I know that's easier said than done, but keep working on it because you'll get to that point. And then also when you're starting to step into really embracing who you are, go slowly if you need to. You don't have to flip a switch one day, but just start to lean back into it. Be patient and trust. Those are huge. I know they're not really steps, but they're important. And the other thing to mention that I actually shared something about this to my stories recently. By the time you listen to this, it won't be on there anymore, obviously. But I've also been hearing this a lot more from other people talking about this, and it makes sense. Being on this journey to find ourselves or go back to who we are, if you think about it, a lot of it involves going back to, if we're talking about doing things that bring us joy, going back to the things that we did as kids that brought us joy. You know, whatever that might be, drawing, skating, singing, dancing, playing outside, just simple things. Things have gotten so overcomplicated these days. And also, we're not getting outside nearly enough. So that can be a step in your process to leaning back into who you are, even if it's not something that's going to become, say, a side hustle or part of your career purpose or anything like that. Who cares? It can be a fun hobby that brings you joy for no other reason than that. Do these things that you know bring you joy. I know I get in this place where I feel like I have to earn the time to do that because I have so many other things I feel like I should be doing. And I think we really need to try our best, do what we can to kind of get over that. And I wrote something down as part of a prompt that maybe I'll do a longer podcast on this because this was a separate podcast idea, but I feel like I'm being drawn to read it right now. So I wrote down, when did we reach a point, just collectively, where we accepted that we would be forced to do things that we didn't want to do or that killed our soul? And what was it like before that? Was life really easier before that? Was it more free? Was it more relaxing? I feel like it probably was. Even though I obviously didn't live in those times, at least not in this life. Curious to find out. But as an example, like something as simple as when I would be job searching, reading job descriptions and maybe the job title or the beginning part of the job description sounded pretty interesting or maybe even exciting. And then as I kept going on and reading more and more about it, I could almost feel my soul already getting sucked out of me, like knowing that I would probably just not be happy there, like listening to my gut and my intuition tell me there's no way I'm going to be happy at this place, so I'm not even going to apply. But obviously, there's only so much in so many ways in this time in our lives, in history, on this planet that we can get away with saying no to. Some things we have to do, but I also feel like there's wheels in motion, there's energy in motion that maybe not overnight, but even those types of things can maybe start to change because I really do believe it goes back to this idea that there's room for all of us to do whatever it is that we know we're here to do versus, as an example, going to work a job that sucks the soul out of us. There could be a whole podcast behind that. I probably won't do that one, but there's a lot behind that too, you know, and what's all behind that idea. But if in order to function, to get by, to provide for ourselves and our families. We have to do these types of things. Why can't we figure it out doing what we know we're here to do? We can. So I know I've kind of ventured into kind of a separate idea from being yourself, but I really do feel that they're tied together. Hence part of what my new intro is that I'm trying to still figure out. I know it doesn't sound as good as I'd like it to sound just yet. It's not quite cohesive. But the main idea is if you first can find the confidence to be yourself, then you reach that place, you reach that level where you know you can trust yourself, trust your intuition, trust your soul, trust your heart, and start to really embrace and follow your soul's true path. It's easier to embrace what you know your calling is, what your purpose is, once you have accepted and embraced who you are. That's the journey. So I hope that this had some helpful tips in it for you. Perhaps you resonated with some of the stories or the ideas behind my stories. If you did, please share this podcast. Let me know. Tag me when you do. Perhaps you want to leave a review. That helps boost the podcast. At least I know in iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called now. I don't know about the other platforms. This podcast is on pretty much every platform, but I don't know about leaving reviews on the other ones. So if you can leave reviews on the other ones, go right ahead, please do. But particularly in Apple, where I know most of you listen to this from, if you feel so called to write a review, that helps boost the podcast as long as it's positive. So if you are not already a part of the Energy Within Facebook group, please jump on in there. You can go back and experience some prior group Reiki sessions that I've done in there. I'll be in there again soon doing some more card pulls. And take a look at the website as well. And perhaps it's time for you to do a Reiki session or maybe an Akashic Records session. If you want to do the Akashic Records session, there are multiple types you can choose from. So you can read the descriptions. If you're still not sure, you can reach out and ask. Or absolutely, you can just pick one for now and we can talk about it in the beginning of your session and we can figure out which one would be best for you based on what you are looking for answers for. I'm really grateful for all of you. I'm so excited about all this growth for the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.